I was paying a contractor $4,000 a month to write standard operating procedures for my business. SOPs for onboarding, SOPs for content production, SOPs for client delivery, the kind of documentation that separates a real company from chaos held together by Slack messages and hope. Last month I canceled that contract. Not because the work was bad. Because I figured out how to get Claude to produce documentation that is genuinely better, in a fraction of the time, for about $40 a month in API costs. And the thing that made it work, it took me 6 weeks of failed attempts before I stumbled onto it. Welcome back to Zero Index. This one is practical. I am going to show you exactly how I did it. Here is what most people do when they try to use AI for documentation. They open ChatGPT or Claude, type something like "write me an SOP for onboarding new clients," and they get back garbage. Generic bullet points. Vague platitudes about communication and setting expectations. It sounds like it was written by someone who has never actually run a business. So they conclude that AI cannot do this kind of work, and they go back to paying humans. I made this exact mistake for months. I would get frustrated, manually rewrite everything the AI gave me, and wonder why everyone was so excited about these tools. The problem is not the AI. The problem is that documentation is not actually about writing. Documentation is about capturing the specific decisions and edge cases that make your business work. The writing is just the container. And if you do not give the AI the raw material, it cannot possibly produce anything useful. Let me give you a concrete example. My contractor, a woman named Rachel based in Portland, she would spend hours interviewing my team. She would sit in on calls. She would ask questions like what happens when a client ghosts you mid-project and who decides if we extend a deadline and what criteria do they use. Then she would turn all of that institutional knowledge into structured documentation. The AI does not have access to any of that. It only knows what you tell it. So when you ask for an SOP, it gives you what it can, which is a template based on generic best practices from its training data. This is where most people stop. But there is a second problem that almost nobody talks about, and I will come back to it because it changes the entire workflow. The breakthrough came when I stopped thinking of Claude as a writer and started thinking of it as an interviewer. Here is the exact prompt framework I now use. I call it extraction mode, and it works like this. I tell Claude you are helping me document a business process. Your job is not to write anything yet. Your job is to ask me questions until you fully understand how this process actually works in practice, including the edge cases, exceptions, and judgment calls. Ask me one question at a time. Do not move on until I have answered. When you have enough information to write a comprehensive SOP, tell me you are ready. Then I start with something simple. I want to document our client onboarding process. And Claude starts asking, who initiates the onboarding, and what triggers it? What information do you need from the client before you can begin? What happens if they do not provide it within your expected timeframe? Who is responsible for each step? What tools do you use? What are the most common mistakes your team makes during onboarding? What does a failed onboarding look like, and how do you recover from it? This interrogation process takes 20 or 30 minutes. But here is what is actually happening. I am extracting knowledge from my own head that I did not even know I had. I have run this onboarding process hundreds of times. Most of it is intuitive at this point. I do not consciously think about the decision tree. But when Claude asks what happens if a client wants to start immediately but you do not have capacity, I have to articulate the actual answer. And that answer is exactly what the SOP needs to capture. By the time Claude says it is ready to write, it has more context than Rachel ever got from a single interview session. Now here is the second problem I mentioned earlier, the one that changes everything. An SOP is not actually a single document. At least not if you want it to be useful. When Rachel wrote documentation for me, she was not just writing procedures. She was implicitly creating a connected system, the high-level process overview, the detailed step-by-step instructions, the reference materials, the decision trees for edge cases, the training checklist for new hires learning the process. Most AI-generated documentation fails because it tries to cram everything into one document. The result is either too shallow to be useful or too dense to be readable. So I developed what I call the documentation stack. And this is where Claude's project feature becomes essential. I create a project in Claude specifically for documentation. Inside that project, I upload everything relevant existing SOPs even if they are outdated, Slack conversations where we discuss process changes, client feedback, examples of completed work. Then I create a project instruction that says all documentation should follow a layered structure. Layer 1 is a one-page overview a new hire could read in 5 minutes. Layer 2 is the detailed procedure with every step. Layer 3 is the edge case library with specific scenarios and how to handle them. Layer 4 is the checklist version for daily use. Always create all 4 layers unless I specify otherwise. Now when I run the extraction process and Claude produces documentation, it produces the entire stack. And because everything is in the project context, it maintains consistency across documents. The terminology matches. The procedures reference each other correctly. It feels like a system, not a collection of random Google Docs. I want to be precise about this because most people miss it. The project feature is not just about memory. It is about building institutional knowledge inside the AI that mirrors the institutional knowledge inside your company. Every document I add makes the future documentation better. Let me show you the actual economics. Rachel charged $4,000 a month. For that, she produced roughly 8 to 10 new SOPs and updated another 5 to 10 existing ones. Solid work. She was worth it. In March, I ran an experiment. I documented every process that Rachel would have handled that month using the extraction method instead. I tracked my time. I tracked the output quality. I had my operations manager blind review the documents without knowing which ones I wrote and which ones Rachel had written previously. Total time I spent 11 hours across the month. Total API cost $37. Output 14 new SOPs and 7 updates, each with the full 4-layer documentation stack. And here is the part that actually surprised me. The blind review, my ops manager consistently rated the Claude-assisted documents higher. Not because they were better written. Because they were more complete. The extraction process forced me to articulate edge cases and decision criteria that Rachel had never thought to ask about. I want to be honest. I did not see this coming. I expected the AI documentation to be faster and cheaper but lower quality. I expected it to be a trade-off. It was not. Now I need to stop here because if I make this sound too easy, you are going to try it, hit a wall, and give up. There are 3 places where this method fails, and you need to know about them. First, processes you do not actually understand yourself. If you have a team member who does something critical and you do not know how they do it, you cannot extract it through an AI conversation. You need to interview that person first, or better, have them do the extraction process directly. I now have my senior team members run extraction sessions with Claude quarterly for their domains. Then I review the output. Second, processes that require visual demonstration. Some things genuinely need video. How to use a specific software feature. How to physically assemble something. How to evaluate whether a design meets brand standards. Claude can write the surrounding documentation, but there is a layer it cannot capture. I still record Loom videos for these and embed them in the SOPs. Third, processes where the edge cases are infinite. Legal decisions. Creative judgments. Anything where the answer is genuinely it depends and you need to use judgment. You can document the factors to consider. You can document past decisions as precedent. But you cannot reduce it to a procedure. Trying to force it into SOP format makes it worse, not better. That said, the number of processes that actually fall into these 3 categories is much smaller than I originally assumed. Maybe 15% of what I thought was undocumentable judgment, it turned out to just be undocumented procedure. Let me give you the exact prompt template I used to start an extraction session. You can copy this directly. I want to document process name. This will be an extraction session. Your job is to ask me questions one at a time until you fully understand how this process works in practice at my specific company. Focus especially on who is responsible for each step, what tools we use, what triggers the process and what signals it is complete, what are the most common failure modes and how we handle them, what judgment calls are involved and what criteria we use to make them. When you have enough information, tell me you are ready to write, and then produce documentation in 4 layers: 1-page overview, detailed procedure, edge case library, and daily checklist. Ask your first question. That is it. That is the whole thing. The power is not in the prompt. The power is in your willingness to actually answer 30 questions about a process you thought you already understood. Here is where I want you to really think about what I have shown you. I did not replace Rachel because AI is smarter than humans. I replaced her because I realized the actual bottleneck in documentation was never writing. It was extraction. Getting the knowledge out of people's heads and into structured form. Rachel was spending 70% of her time on extraction and 30% on writing. But she charged for both. The AI does the writing for essentially free. And the extraction, I can do that myself, in focus sessions, with an AI asking me better questions than most humans would think to ask. This is not unique to SOPs. This pattern, human expertise being bottlenecked by extraction and translation rather than by the thinking itself, this pattern is everywhere. Consulting. Legal work. Financial analysis. The value was never the document. The value was getting clarity on what you already knew but could not articulate. If you run a business and you do not have comprehensive documentation, you do not have a scalability problem. You have an extraction problem. And that problem is now solvable in a way it was not 12 months ago. Try it with one process this week. Pick the messiest, most undocumented thing your team does. Run the extraction. See what comes out. If this changed how you think about AI in your workflow, subscribe. I go deep on this stuff every week.